When Echoes of the End first appeared during its reveal back in June, it didn't scream for my attention that the way that some blockbuster trailers really do. Instead, it whispered to me something about its tone, its atmosphere, and maybe even a mystery it carried within its brief moments of footage tugged at the back of my mind. It wasn't a case of jaw-dropping graphics or some never-before-seen mechanic that made me bookmark it in my mental must playlist. After playing it from start to finish and getting the 100% completion, I realised it wasn't one singular element that reeled me into this one. Instead, it was a mixture, the promise of a rich world, a sense of weight in its tone, and an almost old-school approach to fantasy storytelling. But did the game actually live up to that quiet promise, or was it just the echo of hope playing tricks on me? Well, my name is Fletcher, and this is Xbox Nation, and let's dive into my review of Echoes of the End. The game is set in Ema, a land where magic isn't folklore or superstition. It's actually quite tangible, dangerous, and tightly bound to those called vestiges. These gifted individuals wield power so intensely that the rest of society often fears or outright rejects them. It's a classic fantasy trope. The people with the greatest potential to protect the world are often the ones pushed to its fringes. The central protagonist, known as Rin, is one of these vestiges. Trained by her father to keep the surrounding wildlands safe, she grows up with a sense of responsibility. But the stability that she knows has vanished with her father's death, leaving her to continue their work alongside her half-brother known as Core. It's during what should have been a routine patrol that their lives are upended. They discover a broken ward, massive crystal constructs infused with enough magic to shield entire regions. The wards aren't just barriers either, they're peacekeepers. When one breaks, the ripple effect is immediate and dangerous. This disturbance does draw the attention of the Dalman, an ambitious force from another land, led by another vestige who shares neither Rin's restraint nor her loyalty to Ema. Their goal is quite simple as well: destroy the wards, shatter the borders, and invade it all. Rin's journey though does begin with her brother Core, but it's not long before the narrative pairs her with Abram, an older, more world-weary man with a complicated past and deep understanding of vestige powers. Their dynamic is actually one of the more enjoyable aspects of the early to mid-game sections. Abram isn't a mentor in the conventional sense either. He's not there to coddle Rin or soften her path. Instead, his presence adds depth to the unfolding events, filling in lore without dumping full-length expositions onto the player. The story though manages to balance predictability with charm, and it can get really quite good. Yes, there are twists that you will see coming a mile away, but there's still satisfaction in watching them play out in real time. The game's journal system also helps here as well. As Rin encounters new creatures, factions, and historical tidbits, her notes grow into a rich in-game codex, and it's great to sometimes have a browse at this to take in more of that lore of this huge world. Exploring Echoes of the End is one of its most enjoyable strengths. Merca Games has built a traversal system that's fluid, varied, and fun to experiment with. One moment you'll be scaling cliffs or swinging across rope gaps, the next you're sliding down steep inclines or chaining a double jump into an air dash. It's fast, responsive, and makes even backtracking feel purposeful, almost like Tomb Raider fused with Mega Man X. These platforming skills blend seamlessly into the environmental puzzles as well, which often makes platforming with magical mechanics like shifting platforms, triggering pressure plates, or timing leaps across collapsing structures. They're designed to really make you feel clever without grinding progress to a complete halt, striking a balance between thought and flow. Between solving these puzzles though and exploring the varied landscapes of Ema, you will be facing off against soldiers or dangerous wildlife, and that keeps the pacing very fresh and engaging. The game though splits itself between three main activities: combat, puzzle solving, and exploration. In theory, there is a balanced recipe here. In practice, combat feels like a sturdy frame with a few wobbly bolts, and overall the game does feel like it's a puzzle game first and foremost, with the combat kind of being by the wayside. At its best though, the fighting is still pretty solid and it can be a very fun experience. It doesn't reinvent action mechanics by any means, but it still delivers a satisfying rhythm of attacks, dodges, and magical bursts. Unfortunately, I did notice that the parry system is unforgiving to the point of irritation throughout my playthrough. The timing window is quite razor thin, a moment too early or late and you're eating the full brunt of different blows. This problem does escalate a little bit later on in the game when enemies can unleash strings of rapid attacks, meaning that one failed parry can lead to a chain of damage that's pretty hard to recover from. I did try this out on various difficulty options, and even though the easy mode hands you a larger parry window, it is still quite tedious and sometimes quite unreliable. and responsive. On the other hand, Rin's magic gives combat a welcome layer of variety. Hurling enemies into each other, siphoning their life force, or calling down miniature tornadoes never gets old. The snag though is that magic targeting is pretty finicky at time to time. You will need a clear line of sight, and the system can take its sweet time locking onto your intended targets or missing them completely. Without manual targeting, you either adapt to this one or waste precious energy in its frustration. When Echoes of the End is at its visual best, it's utterly stunning. The Icelandic inspiration in its landscapes is immediately apparent. Rolling green hills, jagged cliffs, and sweeping horizons that really invite you to stop and take it all in. Ruins also carry that classic fancy allure, and there's a tangible sense of place in how these environments are truly built. But the illusion does crack slightly when technical hiccups do get in the way. Textures sometimes load slowly, elements can pop in and out, and on 2 occasions I fell directly through the floor, and then I had to look up patiently at the fading land whilst I hopefully hit a death instead of loading up the entire game again. Lighting glitches also do creep in at time to time in some dark tunnels, as light sources would flare unnaturally bright before settling back down, creating some pretty jarring visual shifts. You do notice this quite a bit within the cave systems, even when there might even be a slither of a crack of light, and it does get quite cumbersome at different times. One point that I did want to touch on though is the main characters within Echoes of the End, and they're very well detailed and incredibly well rendered, but the emotional expression is pretty undercooked and sometimes gave me a feeling as though I was in a Bethesda or even a Ubisoft game. In heavy emotional scenes, facial animations feel slightly limited, with most of the acting done through head tilts or downcast eyes, and it does get pretty janky. The detail is there though within the models, it's just not used to its full potential when it comes to facial animations, and I do feel this could have been down to the small team limitation. I have to say though, the soundtrack within this game really captures the fancy feel without sounding derivative. It leans into sweeping melodies and understated atmospheric pieces that do work in harmony with the visuals. You also get some lovely Icelandic music which will play from time to time and almost as a silhouette when walking down a cliff pass, and it works so bloody wonderfully. Voice acting is also another particular highlight. The Icelandic inflection within its voices does set the world apart from the generic British accents so often used within fantasy settings. While some minor NPC lines feel flat, the main cast really does deliver with its authenticity and its weight. It is not another case of dreadful lines like we had in games like Forspoken, so you can rest easy and know that the protagonist along with other NPCs actually sound like living real people. I genuinely wanted to love Echoes of the End, and in many ways I really do. The world building, lore delivery, and mix of combat and exploration all offer something fresh, and it can be so engrossing and hard to put down. However, the technical issues from some graphical bugs, odd facial animations, and the erratic targeting system do weigh the game down slightly. For now though, I will still recommend that you pick up this game, even with a slight cautionary note. If you are patient and willing to endure its slightly rough edges, there's a rewarding journey here, and you will absolutely adore it. If not, it may be worth waiting until the developers patch it to ensure the bugs and technical woes are all ironed out, and even then it's still going to be a fantastic experience. I am really impressed though with this small development team from Iceland, and seeing such a great first outing has me incredibly excited to see what the future holds for Merca Games.